Thank you for coming. Most of you, I think, have heard me say that of all the important functions that a governor of the state of New York needs to perform, few, if any, are more important than the nomination of judges to the Court of Appeals. I'm pleased that at the very outset of my administration, for my first selection, we've been able to find a distinguished jurist, a judge whose reputation for independence and excellence is universal, pervasive. He's a judge who was listed by the Commission as one of 4 candidates who were considered well qualified, and indeed all 4 are, in my judgment, well qualified, but he is uniquely well qualified. He is the only sitting justice in the history of the state of New York who has appeared 4 times as a choice of the Commission for the Court of Appeals. Indeed, in 1978, when I had the privilege of working with Governor Carey to assist him in making a judgment, I had the opportunity to pass on the candidates that came from the Commission, and Judge Simons was even then a candidate. He is now sitting in the 4th Department. I have spoken with law professors, with lawyers, with lay people familiar with the Court of Appeals. I've spoken with sitting members of the judiciary. We have had the benefit of the advice and opinions of people who have been required to pass on cases that involved Justice Simons' opinions. And I can tell you without any reservation that this selection will come as close to being unanimously applauded as probably any will make. I hope that the next 4 choices that I'll be given to the Court of Appeals will allow me to select the kind of excellence I've been able to select today in naming Associate Justice Richard D. Simons to be an Associate Judge of the Court of Appeals. I'm delighted to present him to you now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Governor, not only for your very kind remarks, but for the honor that almost defies description, and when it comes to giving thanks, the honor of being appointed to this court that historically and today is certainly considered one of the outstanding courts of the United States. It's particularly flattering to be appointed by a governor whose interest in the law and in the courts is so well known, who started in the Court of Appeals, who's lectured as a law professor, and who's practiced as a lawyer, and holds the legal system and the judiciary in such esteem. I'm truly humble. I value his judgment. I look forward to working on the court and sustaining his judgment to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Let me please note the presence of at least 2 members of the judge's family. His wife Maureen is here, and his daughter Linda. Oh, and I think is your mother?
My mother and my sister, Mrs. Eddy, Joan Eddy.
Those 4 lovely women on the. So thank you for joining with us. Any questions? Mr. Friedman.
Governor, did you personally interview Judge Simons and the other 3 nominees? And if so, were there discussions of political philosophy or judicial philosophy as part of those interviews?
I made as thorough a study as I think is possible of the judges, reading opinions, reading materials, discussing with knowledgeable sources. I start with a rather large advantage. I knew all 4 of them as legal personalities. The only one I had not known personally was Judge Simons. Judge McLaughlin, former surrogate Gelfand, Judge Gelfand, Associate Justice Vito Titone are all known to me personally. I've spoken with them many times. I did not specifically interview any of them in connection with this appointment. I didn't need to. I did talk personally with Judge Simons this morning. It's Mr. Justice Simons for the time being until He actually ascends the Court of Appeals, and then it will be Associate Judge Simons.
Mr. Justice, is there any
Oh,
way that...
excuse me, on the question of philosophy. I have said for over 20 years and all through the campaign that a proper understanding of the Court of Appeals and the judiciary requires that you accept the proposition that people are not appointed on the basis of philosophy. I had no discussion with Associate Justice Simons or anyone about their philosophical, political emphases. A judge doesn't function that way. A judge makes a judgment on the basis of a set of facts presented to her or to him. And so, no, the process of the commission does not call for a description or elaboration of political philosophy. The Constitution and the statute is very clear. It describes the criteria of judgment. It talks about character and aptitude and legal ability. Those things can be ascertained by a study of opinions, by a discussion with knowledgeable people. But there was no discussion of philosophy. I didn't know how the judge felt philosophically on abortion or the death penalty or any such issue, and it's not relevant. What is relevant is when he comes to make a judgment on a set of facts before him, does he do it with legal excellence? And that I am absolutely, without reservation, convinced that he has, that he does, and that he will.
What sort of message are you, if there is a message, are you trying to send out with the selection of Judge Simons? I think many people will say he's a Republican, he was an unexpected choice. Are you sending a message with this nomination?
No, I didn't know until this morning that I didn't know what party Alice Daniel belonged to. We were chatting inside about this very question, and I didn't know. As a matter of fact, I was delighted to hear she was registered in a party this morning. The party is not relevant. The party is not relevant. There was no discussion of the party. It has no significance. And if you understood the Court of Appeals the way those of us who have been privileged to study its law for over 20 years understand it, you'd see how utterly irrelevant it is. It has no role in arriving at judgments. Is there a message? Yes. Two messages. One, we will strive for excellence, as we did in making appointments to our cabinet, to our staff. Certainly, where the Court of Appeals is concerned, there is one ultimate test, and that is excellence. Second, we wanted very much to assure continuity. I could have waited. I have constitutionally until January 15. Everyone knows that I have been in the midst of discussions with the nominating commission about enhancing merit selection, improving the process. There are opportunities for us to wait beyond today, but today is the first day of the sitting of the Court of Appeals. And if we had let this day pass without naming a judge, the Court of Appeals would have had to dip down into the appellate division, which it's done before and will continue to do when someone is disabled or for some reason not available to sit. But I think as a matter of precedent, as a matter of operating principle, it is best if this system, the executive and the judiciary, work together to assure perfect continuity. And so by naming a judge today, we will have perfect continuity. We go from here to the Court of Appeals, where Chief Judge Cook and the rest of the court await Mr. Justice Simons, who will become Associate Judge Simons. He'll be sworn in, we hope, at about 12 o'clock. He'll sit to hear his first argument, and this afternoon he will be in the midst of deliberations with the rest of the bench. That continuity is very important to us.
You make up your mind about Judge Simons.
Well, I had Alice Daniel, my counsel, principally, functioning to make a thorough review for me. I gave her a set of questions a week or so ago. She prepared detailed memoranda. I have, as you know, some excellent attorneys, even on the staff around us. In addition to Alice, we have Fabian Palomino, who was a law secretary in the Court of Appeals 111 years ago and has maintained his familiarity since then. Tim Russert is an excellent lawyer. Jerry Crotty worked with us. We all gathered around last night. Andrew was there. Mike Del Giudice was there. We went back and forth. I received the best judgment they had to give me, and I think I announced to them my conclusion somewhere around 9 o'clock or so. Is that right, Alice? I don't know, is it fair to say that it was a unanimous conclusion? That everybody in the room felt that way? They didn't tell me that. They didn't tell me that before I announced my view, but
When can we expect to see the proposals from you for the rearranging the nominating process?
Friday, I hope.
Governor, political and philosophical elements did not play a role. What were your final determining factors in picking Mr. Simons?
It doesn't happen that way. It's not 1, 2, 3. All the things that the Constitution sets out were very carefully arrived at as criteria. You know, after literally hundreds of years of experience, how do you select a judge? What is a judge? They have written tomes on the subject, and it can't be encapsulated. There's no litmus test. There are some things that are obvious. Scholarship. Judge Simons is a well-known scholar of the law. Patent jury instructions, I received letters from professors all over the state. Some professors have come today to join in the celebration of his announcement because of his excellent reputation for scholarship, independence of judgment. Wherever you went, the people who knew Justice Simons and knew his work said the same thing. He is independent, he is objective, he is pure in the distribution of his judgments. They are on the merits. A judge, to be proper in his role at that level or her role at that level, ought to be utterly unpredictable except for the soundness of the judgment and the continuity of it. If you needed external criteria, here is a candidate who, for all the time there has been a nominating commission, has appeared on their list. For every opportunity that the commission had to select candidates, they included Judge Simons. This is the 4th time his name has been sent up, and others have been sent up from time to time and dropped. But this name is the only name that appeared all 4 times. That has to have relevance. And again, I had an extraordinary opportunity here. I looked at him, reviewed him, made a judgment on him in 1978. His name was in a confidential report delivered to Governor Carey on the occasion of the selection of the chief judge. So all these things combined to make the choice, I must tell you, relatively easy, especially when you consider the quality of the whole group of 4 that were presented to me.
Governor, you say you're reordering the nominating process. Will that clear the way to get a woman on the Court of Appeals, do you think?
Nothing stands in the way of a woman being selected now. The commission has every opportunity to send to me the names of well-qualified women. I think perhaps one thing that might happen to change the situation, the statute and the Constitution before it assumed an outreach on the part of the system. I think those of us who are intimately involved in it and familiar with it tend to exaggerate the knowledge of it by the public at large. You know, a person with my background would suspect that everybody would seize the opportunity to submit their name to a commission in order that they be considered for the Court of Appeals. I don't think that happens. I think we could be a little bit more aggressive, perhaps, about encouraging women and others to submit themselves to this process. But there is no impediment now in the statute of the Constitution that makes it impossible to get women candidates. What we are after is not good women candidates or good minority candidates. What we are after is the best available candidates for the Court of Appeals. I think if we did that, we performed that exercise, if we pursued that process intelligently, it would inevitably produce an ample number of qualified women.
Judge Simons, I believe, once wrote a decision that said that Judge Fuchsberg should be removed from the bench. Did you consider this at all when you appointed him, and do you have any fears that this may cause some tension over at the court?
I didn't.
Well, go ahead first.
Well, I didn't write a decision recommending that he be removed from the bench. I wrote a dissent in a judiciary proceeding disagreeing with the members of the court on the procedure they adopted in concluding the case.
Was it relevant that Justice Simons participated in the Court on the Judiciary 4 times? Yes, because the fact that he was selected for that is a mark of distinction from the rest of the judiciary, and that is relevant, that he would have been asked to serve once, let alone 4 times. I did consider that. That he was involved in writing a dissent on the Fuchsburg matter, did I consider that? Not really. Was I concerned about his ability to sit alongside of, indeed alongside of, literally, Judge Fuchsburg? No, not at all. Why not? Because I know Judge Fuchsburg and have for over 20 years, and I know him to be a professional, and I know Judge Simons, and I know that the thing that these two people would expect of one another is intelligence and objectivity and honesty. And I think both of them can be sure that that's what they have gotten and will get from one another. I think you must not underestimate the maturity of the people who lead our judiciary on the Court of Appeals. I have every confidence that both Judge Fuchsburg and Judge Simons will be able to conduct themselves without embarrassment, nor is there any reason to be embarrassed about having told the truth as you see it.
Would you object if I asked Judge Simon a question?
If Judge Simons can't handle your questions, I made the wrong judgment.
I feel like I'm in jeopardy right now.
On a 4th time around, how did you feel either last night or this morning when you heard that you were finally selected after trying for so long?
It was a very nice feeling. I spent the whole night enjoying it. I want to tell you, I don't think I slept a wink all night long.
Work for being selected this time, candidly.
I was hopeful. I hoped I'd be chosen, but I had no way of knowing what was going on through the minds of those charged with that responsibility.
Judge Simons, do you think you had more chance of being selected by Mario Cuomo than by Hugh Carey?
I really don't know how I could answer that. I don't.
Well, I can answer it. He had no chance of being appointed by Hugh Carey because he wasn't going to be the governor. You don't think you have to tell him everything.
Governor, the proposal that you will be submitting for changing the selection process, will it do anything more besides ask that more names be submitted to you?
Oh,
other
yes.
changes?
Oh, yes. Well, I think, I'm not sure, but I think to some extent this has already been described publicly. Alice, I talked about 2 or 3 things. I talked about the possibility of changing the number, which is now 3 to 5, for associate judges to 3 to 7, which would make it the same as is the case with a chief judge of the Court of Appeals. The reasoning being there is nothing but arbitrariness to explain the difference. I think in a better system, there would be no maximum on the number of well-qualified names that the commission could send. I would be content for the commission to live with the constitutional language, which is well-qualified candidates. Whatever that number is, I would leave to the commission. And if they found 5 or 15, there need be no concern about an undue proliferation because the commission's good judgment would limit the number. However, if they're not satisfied with that, and if that's too much to ask, then at least expand it from 5 to 7. Number 2, I think we ought to look at the possibility of getting the fullest possible report to the governor and to the public that's consistent with the need for confidentiality, and there is a great need for confidentiality. Number 3, I have had some discussions with members of the commission who complained to me before I reacted to the notion that getting 8 out of 12 votes, and they have 12 people on the commission, 10 is a quorum, getting 8 out of 12 makes it very difficult. And so I have suggested 7 out of 12, which can make a difference, the 1 vote. So there are 3 suggestions immediately: a fuller report, 7 out of 12 needed to call a candidate well-qualified, and expanding from 3 to 5 to 3 to 7. And is that the sum total of all the improvements you would make? No. I have said over and over that I thought Learned Hand was right. You go from stone to stone across this morass, and I'll take the progress that I can get. And if we can get the commission as we've gotten members of the bar to agree to these changes, and if I can get the cooperation of Speaker Fink and Majority Temporary President Warren Anderson and the other leaders, I'll be very, very pleased.
Will you be submitting a bill for a unified court system this year?
I have not changed my opinion on unification of the courts. I think that's a good idea.
You just said you'd be happy to leave it to the commission if there was no restraints on the number of judges they found or candidates they found well qualified.
With a minimum, yes.
Well, didn't they just do that in picking 4 and you wanted additional names?
Yes, they did.
Then why, if you're happy to leave them to decide, why are you seeking new legislation?
Because next time they may have 11 and think they have to be limited to 5.
Governor,
I have 4 more choices to make.
Governor, did you consult with the majority leader or Speaker Fink before deciding your appointment, and did you discuss with them as yet the prospects of this new legislation?
The judgment as to appointment is very much the judgment of the governor. I did not seek their views in advance. I think it might have been inappropriate to go to the Senate and seek a view in advance and view the fact that they're involved in the confirmation process. I did talk to each of the 3 leaders that I could reach, Senator Anderson, Speaker Fink, and Minority Leader Orenstein last night, as well as the Chief Judge and various others, before this was publicly announced.
Do you expect to do anything soon about Court of Claims nominations?
No, that's not even been addressed yet.
Judge Simons, could you tell us...
We need to make this the last question, if you don't mind, because we have to get to the Court of Appeals.
Could you tell us, in your own view, what your philosophical stance is?
No, I'm waiting for you people to tell me what it is. I've never figured it out.
We've heard that you described as a moderate. Is that an apt description of your philosophy?
I don't really know what I am. I decide cases as they come to me. I hope I decide them on the basis of the merits and the law that's involved. And I'll leave it to other people to characterize my views on it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You have just seen the first half hour of Governor Mario M. Cuomo's news conference, recorded earlier today at the Capitol in Albany.
Go.
This is news conference tag without time reference, take 1. You have just seen Governor Mario M.